Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I am Adam Pwadek, sitting here with Aaron Cameron in sunny, beautiful Vancouver. I'm not sure what the locals are complaining about. The weather here is lovely.
It's always like
I hear it rains here, but I've never seen it.
Never. How dare you?
We are at the Vancouver Real Estate Forum. We're doing a speaker video series courtesy of our friends at the Real Estate Forums. Our sponsors today are ML Emporio Properties and Remax Commercial. We thank them for the support. Our guest is a well-known local developer, is Tim Grant, president of PCI Developments. He's very active in Metro Vancouver on both the condo and rental front. We're going to get into both of those development types and how he's making it work in the current environment. But Tim, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
So Tim dutifully came up and introduced himself when he first came by the podcast area here. But I actually did meet him once before at his very large party that he hosts at the ICSC conference every year. That's how PCI has been on my radar for a long time. If anybody that goes to that conference knows that there's an annual afternoon party that's quite well known amongst the people that attend the event. So we did meet once before.
My partner, Dan Turner, I got to put him out there. He's been very proud to be hosting that party for 35 years.
Yeah.
So that's a very, good. That's awesome. That's great to hear that.
That's a great run. Yeah. And for anybody who's never been to ICSC, you got to do it at least once.
I've never been to ICSC. I've always wanted to go, but
3 times.
Can never justify it. I want to say more important things, but I don't want to dismiss how important the party at ICSC is. So I'll just say 2 other things. How'd you get into real estate? Let's just talk about your background first before you get to PCI.
Yeah, well, no, I'm a Nepo baby, as they say. You know, my dad started PCI in 1982, so I certainly grew up around the business. And it's as these things go, it's a big part of your life. And so I came back to PCI about 13 years ago. And so started my career in accounting.
Much to the chagrin of your dad, probably.
No, it's good. Yeah. It's the Canadian CA, which is no longer around anymore, but that's a different story. But and then was really lucky to do some time at Colliers on a really great team, and the investment team here was a great experience, and then been with PCI for the last 13 years.
What's it like with growing up in that environment? Did you always think you're going to end up back working in the sort of the family business, or did it kind of happen organically? Yeah,
no, I didn't. People, I guess, in retrospect, look and say, yeah, right. But no, and we're fortunate. It's we have a strong family interest, but it's a partnership, so we got other owners. So that's been a great way to balance. We think it's hopefully the best of both worlds. That you got stability of family ownership and history. At the same time, an executive team that's partners in our business, and so that's been really positive.
One more sensitive question, then we'll move on. And it's sensitive. We have had lots of guests on that have there's family businesses, and the transition to the next generation can be challenging. Do you have siblings? Like, how did that work?
I do have a sibling, my younger brother, and he's been smart enough to work in the real estate construction industry outside of the family business. So he's the one that's got to figure it out. No, and they've been great. And you know what? We're super fortunate. I think my dad's done a great job, and with the people on our team have really been good about it. So it's absolutely, there's lots of potential pitfalls, but I think we got a group that's really meaningful, committed to succession. So we've been really fortunate. And I certainly all credit to those guys.
What do your kids do?
No kids.
Oh,
so there you go.
Yeah, it ends. It stops with you. The buck stops
here. No junior accountants coming up.
Exactly. That's right.
All right, so I guess we'll set the stage. We are April 2025. Development is continuing, but with headwinds. That's going to be the focus of the conversation today. Tim does both condo and apartment, which in a market like Vancouver is very relevant given the prolific condo development over the last numerous decades here. So maybe we'll start on the condo front, because that will probably be a little more.
Sorry, I don't interrupt. Before we go there, do you mind? Can we do the history? Because the dad started it in 1983, died 82.
Yeah. Also, PCI has already survived a downturn before.
Well, no, I'm curious because obviously you've got a wealth of experience from the partners and your dad, and just to get to this point, we will set the stage. Okay. I think where Adam was going was we're in a very curious position. We've just been through 15 years of sort of the golden era, as I'm referring to it. But you've been through cycles, at least your organization has. Maybe just talk through how big you guys are, what the history looks like leading up to today.
Yeah, I mean, we're very proud try and punch above our weight. I mean, we are very active in this marketplace. That's where we focus all our energy. And so, our shameless tagline every time we show up to City Hall is to say, we've been around for over 40 years, and in our industry, we're very proud of that. And I think that's been really important to have some experience. I mean, my father and others that have been through it and seen the ups and downs. And I think that's a real hazard for people at my stage, that to this point we really haven't seen those really tough bottoms, and so I think it's been a good governor. I think now we can say we're starting to see some of those bumps, and maybe the last couple of years, but I think that's been really positive. And so our history has been it's changed over time, but really I think one of the big inflection points was us in the late 90s, really focusing around urban mixed use. And I think some of the learnings that our team had at that time, and particularly an influence from Hong Kong, and seeing what development had become there, and the opportunity in mixed use, and then transit adding in as a really important element of that. So from there into the kind of through the global financial crisis, really valuing urban transit-oriented mixed use, and I think that's really become our most prominent developments in the region. Is as close as possible as we can get to the transit stations, and then today even being involved in building portions of those stations themselves. So rather than coming in after the fact, being directly engaged with the provincial government and working together on those. So
Makes it more complicated.
makes it more complicated for sure. But it's a fantastic piece of infrastructure. You're hearing a lot of talk today about infrastructure. That's irreplaceable, and we think a really important part of where people want to be.
One of the complexities that I don't have appreciation for in Vancouver in particular is that you've got a lot of city halls and a lot of
the fiefdoms, right?
Yeah. And so what's that like? Can you just describe, I suspect, active in many over the years. How do you manage that? Particularly if you're focused on sort of these transit-oriented developments, the transit that you're focused on works its way through multiple jurisdictions.
Yeah. Great question. I think it's not dissimilar to Toronto, is that there's a lot of municipalities relative to the size of the region when you look around the world. And so I think people that know more about that stuff than me, I mean, there's layers on layers that maybe don't necessarily need to be there. But in terms of the region, I think it's really reinforced our need to be very focused on specific municipalities. So, somebody comes over and talks about a project in a municipality that we're not active in, that's going to be a very different context than maybe what we know from the places we're most active, which is Vancouver and to a lesser extent, but also significant in Surrey. And, we've done work in the other regions. We'll always look at them, but it's not, each region's different. Each one's got its different nuances. It's got its different relationships. So as a very locally focused developer, we have to be mindful of that.
Just a layer of complexity, right?
Exactly.
Just a layer of complexity. Want to go today's market?
Market, yeah.
Oh, sorry, what's the scope and scale? Sorry, just how many units, what's the size, what's the history look like?
Yeah, so right now we've got over 4,000 rental homes either under construction or under application. And we've along with one of the region's more significant commercial space. So we're over 1 million square feet under application, under construction of office space, which, everybody's a bit surprised about, but we're big believers in that as we go. And then I guess in terms of overall management, we've got a significant portfolio with our partners, and our sister company, WPM Management, is the largest commercial property manager in the province. So, and that's not one that I'm involved with day to day, but again, just I think all in the theme of being very focused on this region, and that's really where we do business.
Do you hold your apartments?
We try to. We're kind of in the older days, we were merchants because we had to be. Like they had to get the capital back to work. Thankfully, in the last 10 years, and by the nature of some good partnerships with some really good, the TD Asset Managements and the Hoops of the world, Low Tide Properties in Vancouver, we've been able to co-own with them on a bunch of things, and that's kind of been a really exciting next stage for us.
So I know we're here to talk about rental and condo, but I do want to take a little sidebar on the office. Is this a belief in office that you're moving forward with the project kind of post-COVID that you could have otherwise not developed? This is a belief that you're putting in, like starting a project from scratch in the office front?
I would love to be able to tell you that we're going to be able to start an office building from scratch today. We think we will. but not today. Just down the street, built 601 West Hastings at Waterfront Station. It finished right, a year into COVID. It's taken some time to lease up, but it's actually doing well.
Was it a spec build?
It was.
Oh, okay,
It was.
yeah,
and we're getting deals done. We're over 80% leased now, so that's been positive, and we've just done at least 3 floors, so 60,000 feet at West Broadway and Granville, South Granville Station. So that's a development with rental residential above it, but 100,000 square feet of office. In this market, we think it's a really good validation of that. And again, we're selective about what we want to hear, but I think you're hearing a bit of sentiment that the Vancouver office market is maybe relatively stronger than other parts of North America, and we're certainly not rushing out.
What rates are you getting?
We're holding the face rates to where they were before. It's really the inducements that's been jumping around.
So what's the NER look like?
Depends where you are. We're kind of your typical downtown rates pre-COVID, right? And so the NERs are lower, but they're getting stronger as you're starting to see some of this inventory get taken up. And we look optimistically to what happened before, that as the world gets scarier, and the first administration was a good example. Vancouver looks better and better, and so I appreciate it. It's got to be optimistic, but if we can get in position, we do think there's office demand here as we move forward.
I appreciate the sidebar, and the I guess the main course coming up.
Well, so you said you had one in application, another office in application.
We have a couple office in application.
Okay,
Yeah,
but with no intention of breaking ground anytime soon.
Well, no, and they're components of larger mixed-use, transit-oriented places. So, a couple of them are, say, 60, 100,000 feet with retail and with residential, and then there's 2 that are standalone buildings, adjacent to stations with residential. So if you can get that first piece going, we think the office is going to be a logical kind of second stage.
I like it. I like the optimism.
Yeah, absolutely. I told you.
Honestly,
I warned you guys.
Yeah, no, it's good because it's
a developer.
Right. We're you don't often hear. Well, I've not heard anyone we've talked to talk about actively seeking out office development right now.
Yeah.
So good for you.
So let's go to.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off. I know I keep cutting you off. Sorry, my bad. That's the third time. Sorry. I love it because we often hear, guys, you got to yin when others yang. You got to move before the market moves. If you're moving with the market, you've moved too late. So I like the vigor. You know what? We believe in it. No one else is doing it. Let's go do it first and be the ones that take advantage.
You'll have the only new product in 2029.
But you know what I mean? Like, you hear everyone always say it, but you don't see it in practice very often.
But I think the big key is it's got to be a component of a larger mixed use, either neighborhood or development. And I think we are not going out and buying suburban office park land and expecting it's got to be a part of a really good urban mixed use environment. We think directly integrated with transit. We continue to believe in that moving forward.
I'm going to mute Aaron's mic.
Sorry.
and move on to condo here. Slightly less scary asset class than office, but obviously there's a lot of headwinds in this environment. Of the applications you got in now, I can't imagine there's too much condo in the mix.
We have no current applications with condo in it, and I wouldn't take that necessarily as a comment about the market. Just about, say, 9 years ago, we really shifted to be focused around rental housing. That suited our model better, with our management capabilities and what we were seeing in terms of municipal priorities, and I think that's played out, particularly in the city of Vancouver. But we do have a large condo project that we're closing right now at King George Hub. It's our 4th phase out there. It's 840 homes. We're about halfway through the closings, and no issues. It's quietly, I think, a good sentiment that absolutely the market has changed, but there still is demand for housing. People are following through and buying the homes that they'd committed to a few years ago in communities that they value.
We had Ryan Berlin on earlier today, and he talked about 2 risks in the condo market. One being the developer holding on to unsold inventory and having to move that at some price, and then also the risk of the buyers who are part of the pre-construction financing not closing.
Yeah.
Do you have either of those risks in this building? Do you see that on the horizon? Have you had issues? If you took back units, how much of a problem would it be? What's your view on that?
We going back to the merit of wisdom from previous cycles. We've had 20 to 25% deposits, and maybe others like me.
Great incentive.
Yeah, we haven't been through it, but you kind of look in the hot market and you're like, well, maybe you need to start to rethink that. And we knew a lot of some of the industry had been doing that. So now, as we're closing in this market, it's pretty hard to walk away from that. And so I think that's a big part of it.
The sale price of those units versus the market price today.
Yeah.
How far off?
So the ones that we're closing today were kind of what we think were one of the bigger launches just out of COVID. So November 2020, it was one of the first kind of big launches came out. They at the time were obviously right on the market. We think they've gone up as much as, say, they were $200 a square foot in the money per se. They're now probably down to somewhere between $50 and $100 a square foot.
So they're not taking a loss by closing on these condos?
We don't think so.
Which we do see in other markets.
Yeah, no, we don't think so. And it's also obviously predicated on what that market is. If a ton of supply is coming in. And so that seems to being reinforced by some of the resales.
Right. Okay, good. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah. No, we think so. And we think it's a good story.
Okay. So given that you're not super active on the condo front, maybe we'll get into rental. The next 2 years, how many projects would you plan on breaking ground on?
We would really like to break ground on 3 large rental housing projects in the next 2 years.
So that's a strong conviction for rental then.
It is.
How many units would that be?
It would be 1,500. And a component, about 50 of which would be below market. 60. But it's a strong conviction in rental, but also acknowledging it's brutal to get those shovels in the ground now. Yeah, and I think what our market has is I think it's got a lot of proposals and people that have been working through the entitlement process that are, I think, realizing how infeasible a lot of those concepts are. So that's really our big focus. Is we think we've got some good proposals. They're going to be tight, really tight. But if we can get them going, we really believe over the long term they're going to be successful. Particularly as we're hearing that new supply is going to be really challenged. As we move into the next couple of years here.
When did you buy the land?
Most recent was about a year ago. That's West 4th and Vine in Vancouver, where it's a Safeway. They're going to terminate. We're going to build a new store and then build rental housing above that. That's a really great development with low tide, we think. And then 2 others, again, right integrated with transit stations that we bought a few years ago. We're really hopeful. And I think just with that, I think we'd acknowledge that not all rental housing, our market was so tight before that people were getting in the habit of, if you just build it, it'll get filled and it'll be successful. I think indicative of maybe a more balanced market. Not all rental housing is equal. So, location, amenities, professional management, transit, all those things I think are going to be really valuable to hopefully their long-term success.
And 50% affordable. Are you going ACLP on that for financing with that much affordable in place?
We've got the one in the city of Vancouver, which is 20% below market. We certainly will give a good look at ACLP. Or other, the province here is looking at their concept. CMHC's been great with the below market things we've done before. You guys know way better than me. It's getting really tough to be eligible and make that work. So, as it stands today, you can't count on that being...
You just need the right lender.
Owner. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. No, for sure, but it's definitely a consideration. And then one of which is all market rental. It's being built under existing zoning. So that'll be more of a conventional financing.
Are you maxing out leverage? Like, what's the philosophy on that?
We're pretty conservative, so it's kind of typical first construction mortgages. But, the CMHC ACLP has been really helpful the last couple of years in enabling us to build not only just rental housing, but also including below market housing. So we're just finishing our 3rd ACLP project in the city of Vancouver, and we were really pleased with those.
It does help you from the ill effects of rents declining if a large percentage of your units bringing on stream were designed to be affordable. You got financing to reflect that. One less unit to worry about losing 5% rent or 10% rent or whatever the drop's been.
Absolutely. And I think also it's been a good component of the buildings we've had. We've noticed that it creates a bit of a different community in that people, whether it's they're valuing the community, valuing the home differently, it's been a really good atmosphere. And it enables you to be working with some of the local institutions, hospitals, schools, whatever it might be, to make sure that those folks that have been participating in the engagement process have good quality housing, achievable housing on the other side.
One of the conversations we have repeatedly on the podcast and off is that many of our developer clients just can't make the math math right now when particularly, I mean, you're buying land at market, so it's not sort of legacy land. Construction costs are off a little bit, but rents are softening. There's a lot of headwinds, and so there's a lot of pencils down. A lot of people just say it doesn't work. How are you able to make the math work when others potentially cannot?
And we're in the same boat. It's tough math, and somebody was saying that to me the other day. We don't have that. There's not a secret formula that's making this work. I think hopefully it's a strong underwriting process that we're not having big surprises at a later stage. And in our market, all else aside, we've had a massive run up in construction costs. So us, like everybody else who bought land a few years ago, we are dealing with different construction budgets. So it's just trying to find the wins to be able to get the project started. In here, like I understand in Toronto, there's a lot of talk about fees and different ways that could be helpful. I think there are some changes there, hopefully some waiver, but even just as simple as deferring fees to occupancy is meaningful. So there's lots of elements that we hope if we can get it close enough to make it pencil that we can get started. And just like I said before, if you can get the shovels in the ground, that's a good sign.
Have you relented on your rent expectations?
We didn't. I feel that we were relatively conservative on rent growth projections. So I would say that we're finishing 2 rental housing developments on the west side of Vancouver within the next 2 months, and we're going to open with asking rents that are above pro forma. And I think part of that was not projecting the annual rent growth that we've seen over the last couple of years.
What's the per square foot rent on that?
I'm going to get in trouble. One of which is West Broadway and Granville, South Granville Station, which is we think a real premier location in the city. So that will be one of the higher rents.
Like north of 5, likely.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and that's one of the best rental buildings in the city of Vancouver.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, is the reality of the market, out here, you've traveled pretty far if you want to get a rent down below, $4 in a new building.
Yeah, but I think one of the things our industry has to acknowledge, particularly in Vancouver, is we've all been talking about the need for new supply for several years. It's working. And the important point of that is you need to keep going to try and make affordability real. And absolutely, it's tough to make it pencil and all those things, but hopefully, be it through government supports or other things, that the continuing that new supply mechanism, I think, is going to be really important.
Are you leasing up any buildings right now?
We are. We got the 2 I just mentioned. So one's both on the west side of Vancouver, and we're just getting that going now.
And how's velocity been so far?
We're just starting to write leases, and we had, as you do on the west side of Vancouver, you get lots of registrations, and then you need to kind of qualify where everybody's at. But we just started some virtual touring this week on one of them, and we had a strong response. So we're optimistic. It's going to be, it's not going to be like a few years ago where you get the sign up and everybody's rushing to get in. But we're hoping that we're going to be in pretty good shape in the next couple of months here.
In a sort of what we describe as a softer market now, where it doesn't, the velocity of lease up isn't as easy as it used to be. Do you think harder about amenity packages?
Definitely, and I think as well said earlier today at the forum, about it's an operating business, and that for us that was one of the attractions of rental housing is we have a strong property management function at Warrington, and so that's increasingly the way they're looking at it. Is it's an operating business, it's amenities, it's personal touch, it's it's trying to be a good active manager, which Vancouver has had a relatively immature rental housing sector compared to other places, and in a place where we're used to the kind of condo landlord and the things that come with that the opportunity for professionally managed rental housing is, we think, really important.
Well, Ryan Berlin, we already mentioned him once, we'll mention him again. He talked about all the units coming on stream that will, from the condo market, that will likely end up in the rental pool. Are you tracking that at all, that you have this shadow competitor that you have to worry about when leasing your projects over the next, he was saying it would take by 2 years to work through that inventory.
It is a competitor, I think, for sure. And we see it directly at some of our developments. King George Hub has got over 1,500 condos that we sold adjacent to over almost 800 rental homes that we're in the process of finishing. So we're seeing it firsthand. We do think that there's a premium or increasing recognition of professional rental management, and so yeah, absolutely, you're going to get some attraction to the condo side, but I think as purpose-built rental housing and purpose-managed rental housing continues to evolve, we do think there's a distinction. But again, coming back to the same message, we needed housing supply. Like the industry was talking about that for a long time. we've had some of it. It has had a meaningful impact on affordability. That we need to keep doubling down on that. Kind of instead of not acknowledging and wringing our hands that all this new supply is going to be problematic. That's what we've all been wanting. Now we got to figure out how to keep it going.
I'm trying to ask this question sensitively. Condos, obviously, you have a different quality component to something that you're going to hold for a long time. I'm sure you build great quality condos, but it's just a different mind frame when you know you're going to own it for a long period. What are the distinctions? What are the different finishings? How do you, and perhaps from the perspective of a tenant, the different style of a unit in one of the condo buildings versus the apartment building?
We aren't a luxury builder. So I think you start with that starting point, that our condo spec is high quality, I think very, very livable. And I think,
would they notice a difference? Maybe is an easier question.
No. And
is that where you're going?
Yeah, and that's an intentional decision on the rental side. And we started several years ago is when we really looked at it, we felt that a condo spec was going to be very doable in the rental housing. We don't do the same extent of built-ins that you would see in a condo housing, just for the sake of turnover and maintenance. But other than that, you're getting a very comparable appliance package, very comparable countertops. So yeah, it's a very, what we think is a condo spec in rental housing.
So Tim, we're almost out of time, but maybe as a closing thought, I'd love to hear where you think we'll be. Like, three of us are sitting around this conference 2 years from now, 5 years from now, the conversations we'll be having, where you think we'll be as an industry in terms of apartment development.
I think in terms of, call it real estate in general in Vancouver, I think in five years time, I think we'll be similar where we are today, and that it's a stable, desirable place to be. There's a real opportunity in Canada, and I think particularly in Vancouver to be take advantage of some of the great opportunities that are out there that's being caused by the real challenges that are there today and instability. So I think over the long run, it still remains someone that we're really strongly convicted in. In the short term, it's going to be tough. Like from a development perspective, it is really tough to get things started, and I think that that's becoming increasingly well documented. But to me, it just comes back to the idea that if you've got some alignment with different levels of government, with the communities, with lenders, to be able to get projects started, which are much needed, I think over the long term they're going to work out really, really well.
Thanks for coming on, Tim. Really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to thank First National for powering the podcast. Thanks to the Real Estate Forum for hosting us here as part of their speaker video series. And thanks to our sponsors, ML Emporio Properties Limited and Remax Commercial. And again, Tim, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Aaron's excited to see you at your party in ICSC.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Yeah. It's fantastic. And it's not fancy. It's not fancy.
It's like a pub environment.
Perfect.
It's nice.
Just the way I like it.
That's right. And football.
Yeah.
Perfect.